so much. Thank you, everyone. There we go. Oh, all right. So, as he mentioned, this talk is about masquerading. And oftentimes when we're looking at a problem, we're saying, that's a technical problem. So what we have this issue is that on the surface, the problem looks like a technical one. However, if we start to look at that, the looks can be deceiving. What we can have is there's this mask, and as we gradually peel back that mask, we see, oh, behind the mask is actually a technical issue that looks like it's a technical issue, but is really a management issue. So what we need to do is we need to find the real source of this. This is often a problem I see, is that companies will solve something. Perhaps they'll solve it, some sort of technical issue, but then another one reappears, and they scratch their heads and say, why did that technical issue appear? Well, the problem was, at its source, management. They didn't solve the management issue. So what will happen is that same issue will reappear and reappear and reappear with slightly different manifestations, but it will always be there because you didn't fix the real problem. The real root of the problem was never addressed. So as we talk about this, let's go through and examine some ways in which this masquerade happens. We're going to start with the symptoms, and then we'll talk about what the diagnosis and what the changes could be. So one of the most common ones I see, and probably the ones that will come out of your C-level, your board, reading anything in the media, going to any conference, is that they're going to have unattainable expectations for you. Especially if you're a manager of a data team, software engineer, something like that, they're going to come away with these conferences thinking that data is easy. All you need is some ChatGPT. You just sprinkle that in, sprinkle ChatGPT on anything, and everything will be easy. So here is the diagnosis. You, as management, will need to fix these expectations. This is going to be especially true as your C-level, as your board starts to go to these conferences. You will need to specifically address what they are talking about. So you're going to have to work with the other teams, the C-level, the board, about what those expectations are. You're going to have to cut down on the buzz. One of the key things I want you to take away is many of the talks were on AI. AI is very interesting. AI is going to be game-changing, but AI will not fix every problem. You can't ask ChatGPT, how do I manage this person? How do I fix this people problem? It's not going to fix that. It's going to solve certain problems, but it's only in certain use cases. This is very key here. So you as management will need to educate. This is what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to educate your peers about what is possible, what you're trying to do. The next is about technology choices. Let's imagine an issue, and this is a fairly common one, where management feels the need to put their hand in on any technology choice. Have you ever hit this one? So I see some smiles in the crowd, and that means yes. This is because management has went to a conference, much like this one, and says, oh, I heard about that. You could solve all that with technology X. So what is the issue? Our diagnosis, trust, and hiring the right people. So at its core, if you don't trust your people to make the right decision, you will always be looking in that and looking over their shoulder. If I have a team that I've hired to do this, why would I take the time and effort to look over their shoulder on everything? There's a lack of trust. Another common issue is that you're hiring the wrong people. So this hiring the wrong people is actually kind of a theme throughout. You're going to see this as if you hired the wrong people, or you tried to take a team that already exists and said, oh, we can just move them over and we can call them a new thing. We take our data analysts and we call them data scientists. We take our DBAs and we call them data engineers. These are all recipes for problems. So what will happen there is the team will be unable to perform, the team will be unable to execute, and as a direct result, you won't be able to execute well. So one of my friends, he says, hire the right people and cry only once. So pay the price once, don't pay the price twice, thrice, quadruple. That will happen. If you hire the wrong people, you won't just cry once, you'll cry many, many times. So one other part that I see that's very common is this beginner problem. What companies will do is they will look internally and they say, we have a data project, we don't have anybody who knows how to do it, let's take this team, this data warehouse team, for example. This is a common issue. They'll take a data warehouse team and they'll say, you guys are the closest to a data team, to a big data team, we'll have you do this. And these are when some of the worst problems happen, because too many beginners on a team are what create a lot of technical debt. They don't know what they're doing. They've never done this before. They've never done something at this scale before. They are going to create all sorts of problems. So you do need to know and you do need to understand what's happening in order to choose the right team. Another common issue is clashing with our software engineers. So as you think about this, let's say you're at an organization right now. Do you have a good relationship with the software engineering team or a bad relationship? More often than not, there's a throw over the wall sort of mentality where we output the data and then the data team takes care of it. This is a whole different story. This is not the story that we want to do. There are various ways of dealing with this, but clashing with our software engineers. Let's talk about this. This all comes back to our hiring practice. Did we hire the right people in the first place? So one of the biggest issues I've commonly seen with software engineering teams and data teams, especially data engineering teams, is was the right people hired for that data engineering team? Put a different way is, if we have the wrong people in there, if we have, let's say, a data warehouse team, they don't have the software engineering skills to do this right. I will say that once again. The data warehouse teams do not have the software engineering skills to do this right. So what will happen there is that they'll be unable to do the things that a software engineer needs to do. So my definition of a data engineer is a software engineer who has specialized their skills in big data, in data. This is key because that specialization allows them to be both in the software engineering world as well as in the data engineering world. If you can't do that, then your software engineers will say, we have a problem. The data warehouse team, the data engineering team can't do this, and they don't understand that. This will be a key problem that you will have to deal with. So what is key there is to look back, make sure you have the right people, and if you have the right people, what you'll need to do is to go back and really work on the relationships between those two teams. If there is sometimes the distinction between the teams is very, very deep. Software engineering is under the CTO, and over here in this very different organization under the CDO, we have our data team, or under this, so that chasm between those two teams can be very significant. And as a direct result, we need, as management, to break down that. We need to make sure that we know and work with our software engineering teams, the ones producing the data, the ones creating that data. Until that happens, you won't really be able to go through and deal with the issues. Our next one is our legacy integration. How many of you have a legacy integration that you're trying to do? Quite a few hands up. Guess what? What often happens is management thinks the opposite. We've already written that code, so we already know it really well, so this is going to be easy, right? Really easy, in fact. This will be so fast. We don't need to hire anybody new. We don't need to do this. We know this legacy system really well. Well, guess what? The opposite is the case. Our diagnosis is that we need to reevaluate our timelines and our resources. Legacy projects, legacy displacement projects take far, far longer and are much more complex than greenfield applications. This is because we need to have all of the information about the new system and all of the information about the new system. And the people that create this are going to have to split that chasm once more. You're going to have somebody who knows the new thing and can create the old thing, or the new thing. This is actually a pretty difficult person to find. This is a very difficult thing for a team to do, for a team to execute on. So what needs to happen is the management team needs to have, and have talked about, sane expectations. So that expectation of this is going to be easy, this is going to be fast, this needs to be, management needs to deal with this. This is not a technical problem, this is a management problem. Silver bullets. Here's another much more common one. Here in this situation, management usually from a C level, sometimes a VP level, says, this is really hard, we have to pay a bunch of people a lot of money. Can't we just do a no-code solution to do this? Anybody ever hit that? A few hands up in the audience. Guess what? No code can do some things. It cannot do everything. And so what's often sold versus what can happen is a very different story. So what we have is, hey, technologies don't necessarily make this easy. They may make a part easy, but they don't make everything easy, and the two are very different. It's incredibly important to understand when you are talking to a salesperson, that salesperson's job is to sell to you. The person's job is not to tell you the truth, it is to get you to sign that check. There's a difference here. And so if they're not talking to a technical person, guess what? The technical person won't answer them the right questions, or they won't say, well, can you do this? Can you do that? To a business person, sometimes those questions seem like delays or just trying to nitpick, when the reality is we're trying to make sure, does this even work? What can this even do? Is this a big enough problem that it will even help us? So it's really important that to understand, technology can facilitate certain things. However, it can easily be solved perhaps with another technology, perhaps better homegrown, but it is important for management to step in on that. Another common issue is with non-technical management. This is especially true when we have an organization with either a long heritage, or they have or they're from a manufacturing, typically a non-technical sort of thing, industry, and they think of this as an assembly line. We have cog A, who is worker A, and they just sit there and they churn out this stuff. And we can replace worker A in a day. And these sort of companies are difficult. Not impossible, but it's very difficult for them to change, because you're not just changing the people, you're changing the mindset. Mindset is equally as important, where if you come in and you try to say, and I've done this, hey, company who does manufacturing, I can't replace this person in a day. I can't replace them in a month, not 2 months, not 3 months. This is important because they're thinking this is the manufacturing, this is the assembly line. You are replaceable, and that is not clear to them. So what we need is, the only time, in my opinion, that a non-technical manager could run a technical team is when they have a solid and experienced team. But oftentimes it goes together, where a non-technical manager has a very inexperienced and not a solid team. And those two become a downward reinforcing cycle. It's a really bad cycle. So what we need to do is, we need to go back and we need to get buy-in. We'll talk about this in a second, but these issues start at the top of the company. There's a top of the company mindset, and it's usually that founder, that CEO, came from whatever that industry is, manufacturing, let's just say. They will continue that mindset of manufacturing all the way through the company. So it's about management helping that CXO understand that this is not the same. You cannot operate a software company or a software part of the company as if it were a manufacturing line. Recipe for failure, recipe for high churn. So what we need to do is management needs to look at these deeper issues. If I were to talk to one of your developers, let's say, or perhaps one of your other people, they would say, all of our issues are technical. But as we look deeper, we saw that each one of those issues was actually related to a management issue, and a management issue that we had to go deeper into to see, oh yes, we can fix this, but it's at the management side. One other thing is, if any of you are still able to hear me, if any of you are at a high enough level, let's say you're a VP level, one issue I've come to this, and I believe this strongly, if you do not have board level buy-in, if you do not have CXO level buy-in for this, you are not going to be successful. There is going to be this eventuality where you will have to go to the board, go to the CEO to change something, to get budget for something, to say, hey, this other team is not playing well, we need them to play better, for example. You are going to have that buy-in, because if you don't have that buy-in and you say, I need another 100,000 for a license, I need another $1 million for a license, they'll say, I don't know you. You aren't creating any value. There's no buy-in. So if you don't have this buy-in ahead of time, you will eventually be back against the wall asking for this buy-in, asking for something. And it's also very key, these changes actually have to happen at the management level. You need that organizational buy-in. So when you look at your organization, you also need to realize that the data, the information isn't just coming from you. So let's say you're a technical manager. The information about what's happening in the outside world is not coming from you. It's coming from other places, advertising, marketing, conferences, all of these sorts of things. So the message about what's cool, what should be done, what's hip, it's not coming from you telling them. They're also hearing about ChatGPT. They're hearing about AI. And so as a direct result, you will have to combat that. You need to realize that, and you need to combat that and say, oh yes, I went to that conference too, or I heard this talk from Jesse, and he talked about this is what we need to do. We can use GPT, but we need to do this thing. Another key takeaway is that data projects will highlight our process problems, our organizational problems, and our technical issues. So sometimes there were things that we could do before we got really into data. Let's say we were doing software engineering. Agile has always told us to go talk to our customers. But now, but we may not have always done that. Now with our data projects, if you aren't talking to your customers, you will not be successful. It's going to highlight that problem in your process of you not doing enough to work with your customers. Or if you don't have the right technical people, it is going to highlight that. So please, as you start to see these issues in the organization, another key point is that these issues do not change, do not fix themselves without concerted effort. It isn't, let's just give it enough time, this will work itself out. You have to change this. It is a concerted effort. It will not fix itself. So as we saw in this talk, not every problem was technical. Go deeper. Look for the problem behind the problem. Look for the problem behind our process. This way, you'll find that problem, you'll fix that source problem so it doesn't happen again in a different way. If you'd like to learn more about how to run teams, I wrote a book called Data Teams, and you can go to datateams.io to learn more. With that, a big thank you for being here, and I wish you the best of luck on your data projects.